I finally finished the It Girl book that I've been seeing everywhere. But the question remains, was it worth the read? My Year of Rest and Relaxation. From the title, it sounds like the book is about a woman taking a harmless vacation. Well, it's a lot more complex than that. But before diving into my thoughts, sit down, relax, grab your coffee, and let us read. What makes this book unique is the fact that we're following a nameless protagonist, a 26-year-old woman who, despite navigating her life in New York, being this pretty, rich, employed, and educated woman that she is, still finds herself unhappy. On paper, her life seems perfect. She graduated from Columbia, she worked at a chic art gallery, and she inherited a colossal amount of money after her parents' death. She also has a best friend and a lover. With a life that sounds liquid smooth like that, she must be happy, right? Well, not exactly. As a matter of fact, she's depressed. Set in the early 2000s, we follow our protagonist in a wild journey of self-medication, depression, a series of hallucinations, and a downward spiral that may or may not lead to her death and demise. All of that and more, all in the hopes of being reborn, coming out to the other side new again. With themes like self-destruction, identity, isolation, search for the meaning of life, grief, and trauma, My Year of Rest and Relaxation explores the world through the eyes of a cold-hearted woman who has everything, yet feels dead inside. In between fragile steps and delicate pages, we follow a desperate woman's path to self-destruction in the hopes of being reborn through her hibernation project she then called her Year of Rest and Relaxation. The motivation behind her hibernation project, she believed that this act will save her life. She believed that only if she sleeps enough, the cells in her brain would have regenerated, making her pass nothing but distant and foggy memories. Leading us to ask the question, what exactly does she want to escape? For one, sleep, along with large doses of drugs, made her numb and immune to painful memories. Drugs took days of her life away, and she let it. In her head, an equation is written that goes like sleep plus drugs equals escape. As a reader, this struck me as a genius idea because when we sleep, it does feel like an escape. And the refreshing act of waking up does feel like a rebirth. As someone who had episodes of depression before, I certainly saw sleep as refuge. A hole I could crawl into, away from the darkness, heavy feelings, and my inability to live life and deal with life at the moment. During sleep, she felt as if there was no past or present. She felt nothing. She's nothing but a blank state. Although this premise seems bizarre at first, the author made us understand why she craves sleep so much by showing us how dark and cold her past painful memories were. In vulnerable and traumatic flashbacks, we see her growing up with a heartless, unfeeling mother who may or may not have aborted her if she had the chance, and a father who she likened to a non-entity, a stranger. But despite the comfort and refuge sleep had afforded her, it came with a huge price. Some days her memories are unreliable. From sleepwalking, holes in her memories, to waking up in strange places, clueless how many days has gone by, remembering very little, a unique side effect of drugs that worked in her favor. Despite the dangers and risk of overdosing, she continued to ride the downward spiral, consisting of isolating herself from the world, watching a series of comfort movies to pass the time, monthly meetings with her sketchy therapist, until as readers, we realize that all she really wants to escape from is herself. Her self-loathing manifested in forms of the vanity her privilege afforded her, as well as the luxury of ignorance, not caring about events outside of herself, incapable of sharing things and expressing her emotions. Inside her own bubble, she was safe, alone, untouched, and unknown, and full of hate to an extent that we see as readers that her parents convince her that she's unworthy of love, which may be the reason why she grew up not knowing how to discern healthy from toxic love, leading her to meet men like Trevor, the epitome of toxic masculinity. Our protagonist is beautiful, but at the end of the day, what is beauty in the hands of someone who doesn't know its real value? And although depressing, triggering, and graphic to read at times, this felt like a story that must be told in a bold, honest voice. The main character wants us to ask ourselves, how long can we cling to the stability in living in the past? How far can we go to escape our stupid, miserable lives? And how to best let go of our old habits, self-loathing, and our all too familiar lives? Which leads us to her catharsis, her final act of surrender, letting go of her old self and life. Before committing to a jailed state, another level of her hibernation, she rids herself of her old life by emptying her entire wardrobe, paying her best friend Riva in high fashion to finally leave her alone, believing that Riva's greed would unburden her of her own vanity. She sold her parents' house, packed up the things in her apartment, before jailing herself for 4 months, 120 days, in which she will only spend 1 hour in conscious state. In a span of 4 months, she is only awake for 40 hours, equivalent to less than 2 days. This, she believed, was her last shot for a new and better life. In her head, an equation goes like this: a blank canvas of an apartment plus deep sleep equals rebirth, or coming out into the world renewed. Psychotic, genius, desperate, clever, stupid, unhinged, call it whatever you want. But her dedication, laced with desperation and commitment, felt like the most deeply human thing there is to me. Because in life, we want to start again, a second chance, a clean slate, without the inconvenience of death. So as a privileged woman, she found a way. Sleep through days, escape time, regenerate the cells in her brain, until the world and everything in it, including herself, is new again. So, after 4 months, did she do it? Was she finally reborn? Yes and no. The journey was and wasn't easy. From the calm purging of past associations, starving her mind to obliqueness, the certainty of reality leaching out of her, to feeling less and less, submitting to her imagination, she began to spend her waking hours gently, lovingly, growing reaccustomed to a feeling of cozy extravagance. She began to gain weight she's lost during her consistent drug binge and start demanding for flowers until day by day it became easier and easier to pass the time. With only one pill left, she swallowed and asked for mercy. But did it come? Did she do it? Did she lose? Was she gone? It was emotional to read the final two chapters of this book. Not because she died, but because people were so nice. And finally, she was alive again. After coming out into the world, reborn and new again, she saw the world with fresh and compassionate eyes, like the ones she had when she was a little girl. The eyes her mother and father scraped off her skull is back, fresh, wet, open, and new again. After 4 months and 120 days, the voice of our protagonist evidently changed. Everything was softer to her eyes, skin, and even her heart. She fed squirrels as if she was Snow White, visited parks, and relished looking at things other people let go of at the Goodwill. The idea of money and conversation felt shallow to her now. She's ready to sink her hands and teeth into the beautifully chaotic world around her. With fresh eyes, she's now ready to look outside of herself, even at the expense of her own misery. Through her agonizing and deeply enlightening journey, I learned a lot of things. I realized that as humans, we are prone to getting stuck inside ourselves, secluded in our own little worlds, busy building our ideal lives, being greater than the last generation that came before us, to an extent that we forget to live, to spend the very little time this life we have has afforded us, that sometimes we are so inside of ourselves that we forget to help those who need it. Our quest for perfecting our lives has prevented us from truly living a life. This book argues and tries to persuade us that all glory is mundane, that in the end, in our deathbeds, we must make sure that we're not taking with us a long list of things we wished and regretted not having done. The simplest and the most fundamental rights of the human experience, like falling in love, confessing our hearts, and walking through fields of grass barefoot. This book argues that perhaps beauty and meaning have nothing to do with each other. That to preserve our beauty is to rob ourselves of truly experiencing the nitty and gritty parts of the world. This book reminds us that our future is indeed in our hands. But to truly enjoy the journey, we must learn not to take life too seriously, to spend our waking hours gently and lovingly, making the life and body that we're living a warm and safe home. That only if we disregard our vanity, ego, and ravenous desire for beauty and success, perhaps we'll finally see the meaning between the lines, that we are alive, things are alive, and the world revolves, the sun rotates, and the moon succumbs just for us to see that. In the end, our nameless main character realized that perhaps pain is not the only catalyst for growth. Perhaps kindness can be, too. In the end, her sleep had worked. She was soft and calm and felt things. Wide awake and fully aware that not only did she exist, but she was also alive. In the end, she was in awe, not just by the beauty, but also by the meaning behind her life and the world and the people in it. After accomplishing her year of rest and relaxation, she came out a human being, diving into the unknown, wide awake. And she invites us to do the same. The minute I finished this book, I knew that it was going to be my Roman Empire and one of my favorites. And again, I felt one of the greatest feelings in the world, being right. I am so happy to have read this the moment I read it, and I couldn't thank my friend Jamie more for lending me her copy. Thank you all for watching. Of course, you already know that this book is a solid 5 stars. Remember to not spend your waking hours stuck inside yourself. Look out into the world, find the meaning behind its beauty, and listen to that funny feeling beating inside your heart, mind, and stomach, encouraging you to live a little. Thank you for listening to me and letting me talk for 16 whole minutes about my Roman Empire book. And please subscribe, like, and comment if you want to know more. Bye! Thank you for watching!